The ranking member is recognized.
And I appreciate the hard work of Mr. Miller, who's one of our most thoughtful members, and I would hope that this is an amendment that would be in order when we get to the floor, because this is a serious subject. I also want to say that I am troubled by this bill in its unamended form. I will strongly oppose it. We will be offering an amendment. I wouldn't be enthusiastic about it. It might become acceptable. Derivatives were a major cause of the last crisis. Now, the derivatives were the method of distributing faulty products. One faulty product was mortgages to people who shouldn't have gotten them. We, I think, made them very, very unlikely. But we don't know that there won't be another faulty product. And those were the bullets. Derivatives were the guns that ratcheted these things all over the place. We moved to begin to restrict them. I will say that when I'm told, well, don't restrict things because you will be losing value to the economy, the question is what value? We passed a bill yesterday. Some of my colleagues didn't like it, but we in this committee were basically supportive, to protect end users, people who use derivatives because they have a product that they are making or buying and need to do that in the production of goods and services. They should not be covered. But derivative transactions between and among financial institutions are not clearly of such value that we should restrain from any restriction that comes from regulation. We don't set out to ban them, but given what a cause of instability they were, before we withhold, we ought to see, well, what is that great value? And I think it is clear that when we are talking not about the people who use the product and hedge for that purpose, but about these financial transactions between and among these institutions that are purely financial, that the benefits are mixed. And much of the benefit accrues to the institutions doing them, some to the economy as a whole. What we have before us is a bill that would allow American institutions to engage in the kind of transactions that prove dangerous and damaging if they do them under certain institutional arrangements overseas, on the theory that, well, that wouldn't have any financial impact back in the U.S. But it might. One of the things we know now is how interconnected the world economy was. We talked about how the last crisis might have been as bad as the Great Depression. Well, in some ways it could have been worse, because during the Great Depression you had a kind of insularity in the world. You had separation. We're now all in the same grid. I don't know how anyone could be confident that American institutions, foreign affiliates, if they were not to behave well or if they were to make mistakes, would have no impact. So we will be offering an amendment later that would say, yes, there's reason not to subject our institutions to double jurisdiction and not to put them at a great competitive disadvantage, but not without a safety net, not without a residual capacity, at least in the American regulators, to say, and we are talking here about American institutions, if this is a German bank dealing with a French financial house with no American institutional involvement, the question doesn't come up. They're doing it outside the U.S. But where there are American institutions, to say that we are not going to regulate these and to remove statutorily from our agencies, the SEC and the CFTC, a capacity to step in if things look bad is a very, very grave error. It may well be that the norm would be that there would not be regulation from them. That would be the hope, that there would be good regulations elsewhere, that they wouldn't be getting imprudent. But the bill as it is presented to us leaves us no residual authority to step in if those hopes prove not to be the case. We also yesterday dealt with legislation about relations between affiliates. We've tried to remove undue obstacles to the good use of derivatives. But the notion that they are basically okay and need no regulation at all, even when they involve American institutions, but we can trust them entirely to foreign regulation, I think is a grave error. So we will have an amendment on that subject. And I do ask unanimous consent to introduce into the record at this point a letter from Americans Financial Reform, very much opposed to the bill and making the point, totally reasonably, that derivatives played a major role, the lack of regulation of derivatives played a major role in the crisis, and enacting again an exemption for a substantial bit of derivative business by American institutions from any regulation would be an error.